Hello and welcome to the 6th revision video relating to USA, A Nation of Contrast, 1910 to 1929. Today we're going to be looking at key question 6, popular entertainment. As always, I'm going to suggest that you pause the video here so that you can get our headings down for today. We're going to be looking at silent movies, popularity of the cinema and movie stars, advent of the talkies, changes in popular music, radio and gramophone, and dancing and the speakeasy culture. Again, as I always say, don't just rely on this video, use your book, use your websites, all the other resources you can get your hands on as well to make sure that you're getting a full revision experience. So silent movies. Until 1927, films were silent and they're often accompanied by live musicians and sometimes sound effects. Some even provided commentary by cinema employees or projectionists. In most cinemas, though, it was just a pianist. Fast music could be played for chase scenes, romantic music for love scenes, and gradually the cinemas become more and more popular and they improve their facilities because of this and they attract more people. The Roxy Theatre in New York could seat 6,000 and actually replace the piano with a whole orchestra. Many cinemas like this followed suit, some of them using orchestras, some of them using huge organs, concert organs. And this actually resulted in the output of films in the 1920s being about 800 a year, which is monumental. There's lots and lots of films every year. They covered a wide range of subjects. You had the comedies of Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, romances of Clara Bow, adventures of Douglas Fairbanks. You had westerns and biblical stories, lots and lots of different topics. And it actually made the film industry one of the biggest contributors to the American economy in the 20s. It really did contribute to that boom. It was a form of escapism for people, so a way of escaping their daily lives and going and seeing something different for a couple of hours. So, why were they so popular? It was cheap. Your average American could afford the 5 cents to go. The movie stars were an attraction, lots of sex appeal, people following the fashions, improved transport, so it was easier to get to the cinema. Films are interesting, as we've already discussed, it was a form of escapism. Because the economy was so booming in the 1920s as well, a lot of people had more leisure time and they had more money because wages were higher, and this meant they could afford to go, which contributes again to the development of the film industry, which also leads to new technology, new cameras, new equipment, which makes the films a little bit more realistic. Movie stars are also really popular during this time. Moviegoers wanted to see certain stars irrespective of whether or not the film was of quality. Before 1910, their names didn't even appear on the credits, but as soon as they did start appearing on the credits, people became interested in them. They started to want to know more about them. You had people like Clara Bow, Buster Keaton, Rudolph Valentino, Charlie Chaplin. There's Rudolph Valentino and Clara Bow by here. Rudolph Valentino, very, very popular Italian actor, was made by his role in The Sheikh in 1921. But he actually died suddenly in 1926. And his fans were actually so grief-stricken that a lot of women committed suicide. Charlie Chaplin, probably one of the most famous actors of all time, starred in lots of films such as The Tramp, The Kid, The Dictator. He was instantly recognisable, and he actually preferred the silent movies than the talkies, but he did contribute to the talkies later on as well. Arguably as well, women like Clara Bow was the original it girl, were Hollywood stars that had the most influence on society at the time. She played a flapper in a number of films and influenced many young girls to behave in the same way. She was a really popular actress in 1928 and 1929. But women such as Gloria Swanson and an actor such as Buster Keaton were also really influential. Now, Hollywood also becomes popular as well because of these movie stars. It becomes a popular place to live. A lot of the American film companies go there, like Paramount, Warner Brothers, and Columbia. And a lot of people sort of flock there to live. They build themselves luxury homes. Gloria Swanson actually had a 22-room mansion in Beverly Hills. Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton both lived there as well. They did, though, provide some problems with regards to morality, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the development then came of the talkies. Now, in 1927, the first talkie was released, and that was called The Jazz Singer. And it was made by Warner Brothers. Now, they were the first film company to experiment with sound, and they used the newly invented Vitaphone system. It recorded sound on a disc, and its success quickly caused other film companies to follow suit. This had a bit of a bad effect on some of the silent movie stars, because some silent screen stars lost their jobs as their voices didn't really fit talkies. And again, by the end of the 1920s, several famous film studios like Warner Brothers, William Fox, and MGM had all moved to Hollywood and started using talkies, started using recording. And they actually had their own publicity departments to make up and publicise stories that kept fans attached to their stars' private lives, as we discussed earlier. And this sort of came because the talkies made the movie stars even more popular again. So there was, however, some restrictions. The Haze Code was a code drawn up in 1930. It sort of stopped scenes of nudity and dancing of a sexual nature. A kiss could last for no more than 7 seconds of a film. Adultery was not to be portrayed in a good light. Clergymen not to be ridiculed. Films should condemn killing. Some people, especially religious people, were very concerned about the morality and the influence of these films. So the actual extracts from the Haze Code are these: no screen nudity. Screen kisses must not last. Adultery must not be presented as attractive. Producers must avoid low, disgusting, unpleasant, though not necessary evil subjects. Members of the clergy cannot be comic characters or villains. Murder, arson, and smuggling must be shown as evil. So film producers had to abide by the Haze Code when they were creating their films after 1930. It wasn't only films that changed during this time, there was also changes in popular music, and we see the coming of the jazz age. Now, jazz originated in the southern states of the USA. It comes from blues and ragtime music of black people. Young people had had enough of their parents' old dances as well. For example, the waltz and your ballroom dancing, people will get fed up of that and were looking for something different. It's much more rhythmic and lively, and it was easy to dance to. And it apparently led to young people smoking, drinking, and according to some, behaving indecently. College students especially are willing to challenge their parents' values and lifestyles. It actually becomes really popular with young middle-class white people, and thus this is where we see the flappers coming into being as well, which we'll look at in another video. A lot of people condemned it as well. For example, in 1921, the Ladies' Home Journal published an article with the title "Does Jazz put the sin in syncopation?" Syncopation refers to the offbeat rhythms that were in the jazz music. Some cities, including New York and Cleveland, prohibited the performance of jazz in dance halls publicly. However, this just made it more exciting to everybody. And jazz becomes the great attraction for nightclubs and speakeasies, and is brought into homes through radio broadcasts. A lot of black musicians become really famous. Louis Armstrong and Bessie Smith becomes the Empress of Blues. However, racism was still a huge problem in this period. Bessie Smith, for instance, despite her fame, she was still not treated very well when she was actually killed in a car crash. She was taken to a hospital in 1937 that was for white people only, and they actually refused to treat her because she was black, and she died. And there's a picture of her there. So despite the fact that the black jazz musicians were famous and listened to quite widely across the country, they still were treated really badly. There's examples of jazz singers who would perform in hotels and in pubs, and they wouldn't actually be allowed to sit in that hotel or sit in that room unless they were performing. So again, still facing a lot of racism. The radio and gramophone was a really important development as well. Listening to the radio, because remember this is a pre-television era, was arguably the most popular form of entertainment. Mass production, the spread of electricity and buying on hire purchase meant that approximately 50 million people, so 40% of the population, had a radio set by the end of the 20s. Not everyone could read, so the radio becomes really, really important a form of communicating news and information to the people. And as popularity of jazz increased, more people buy radios, records, and gramophones so they can listen anytime that they want. Sports matches are also broadcast, and it could grow and it could succeed because advertising was also really important on the radio as well. So it actually contributed to the economy, not just the electricity, not just the mass production, not just all that. It actually was able to advertise products, and so it contributed to the economy that way as well. So dancing and the speakeasy culture. Dancing becomes really popular after World War I. They result from the swing dancing that developed alongside jazz music, and so black people also had a huge influence on this. Things like the Charleston and the Black Bottom become really popular with young people. Because many of these new dances were quite sexually suggestive, parents were shocked by their children's enthusiasm to dance to them. There was a lot of backlash against them as well from the sort of more religious states. The Lindy Hop also becomes a popular dance. This honours Charles Lindbergh for crossing the Atlantic on an aeroplane in 1927. Jazz had been prohibited in a number of cities, for example, New York and Detroit, so performances moved to the speakeasies, making young people even more determined to rebel. It also led to dance marathons. As the new jazz dances swept the country, dance marathons become really, really popular. They were contests basically of self-endurance and human record setting, with dances continuing non-stop until one couple remained standing to claim the prize. The participants wanted to win not only money, but wanted to achieve some fame as well. The craze began in 1923 when a lady called Alma Cummins danced non-stop for 27 hours. She wore out 6 different partners and acquired a bit of national fame for the achievement. So many dance competitors thought of themselves as show business stars, and some hoped to break into films as well. However, not many of them actually made it big, but it doesn't diminish the fact that dancing was very, very important to this time, and it really contributed to the speakeasy culture and the jazz age as well. So the speakeasy culture developed because of the Prohibition. The entertainment in there is often provided by black jazz musicians. Now this is really important because it actually is one of the first places where black people mix with white people, and nothing is done about it, and it's okay. So the Prohibition actually encouraged this. And it draws young people from all different kinds of social classes. However, the mixing of races and the widespread belief that jazz incited sexual activity caused a large number of people to oppose it. It helped gang bosses, though, because they opened fancy clubs with dancers. Popular stars like Fred and Adele Astaire entertained at places like the Trocadero, and Duke Ellington led the house band at the Cotton Club. So very, very popular. And that brings us to the end of Key Question 6. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you next time for Key Question 7.